Welcome back. As always, if you have anything to add to the conversation, or anything just add to this video in general, please leave it down in the comments, because that's why I make these videos, to have conversations, so please talk about it down there. Also, if you have any suggestions for a future video, or anything you want me to talk about in a future video, let me know down there. Or if you have any comments about the channel in general, because I'm always looking for improvement, and those comments help out a ton. Also, finally, check out my other channel, YC Games. It's one with the orange logo, and let's just get right into this now. So, I was, as I'm sure many of you were, really excited about Borderlands 2 in VR. I thought, alright, cool, we're getting something new Borderlands. That has to mean good for the franchise as a whole. And I still believe that aspect, but looking just at Borderlands 2 in VR, I kind of got to question myself, is it worth it? You know, I have a lot of fun with it. There's a couple things that would change, but, you know, we'll get into all that. So I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, kind of what it means for the franchise as a whole, and if I think the game was actually worth coming out or not, if they should have spent any time on it at all. But let's get into it. Now, how it is right now, how Borderlands 2 in VR is right now, it is exactly as good as it could be. My biggest complaint, honestly, is the co-op. I'm going to talk about more about that in the next section, but just forgetting co-op in general, as far as a single-player Borderlands 2 experience, putting in VR, this is the best way I think they could have went about it. The gunplay's good, the movement's good, just the look of it, the feel of it, everything about it feels exactly what I wanted from Borderlands 2 in VR. Now, like I said, there's a lot of problems with that, and I'll talk about that in the next section, but as far as right now, it is as good as it could be. Some of the big standout pros would be the movement system, how they included teleporting and free movement. I personally prefer free movement, but after a while playing it, just purely free movement, about any VR game, I do get motion sickness. And that's the reason the companies will implement a teleport system instead. I don't personally like that. I like to switch between the two, which is why I really think they nailed the movement for this game. So yeah, just the way how easy it is to switch between them, that's great. I love that, because like I said, I prefer the free movement, but after a while, I do start feeling a little nauseous, and I do want to switch to teleporting. So kudos to them, good on them for that. I also like the inclusion of the slow motion time, the badass mega fun time, or whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called at this point. Whatever it's called, that was a good inclusion. Now, it was more to fix a problem, and again, I'll talk about that more in the next section, but it was a good fix to the problem. So good on them. Now we gotta get into the bad. So, like I did mention in the last section, one of the biggest things that annoy me about it is the lack of co-op. Now, I realized that this was kind of more of an experiment just to see, hey, if we made Borderlands in VR, would anyone buy it, would anyone care? So I understand why they kind of didn't include the co-op or even the DLC, how this is kind of an experiment, because that does suck. And especially how big co-op can be for Borderlands. Like, I, personally enjoy playing with friends, but it's one of those games where I can't play solo, so it's not a huge pain in the butt, because I do play solo often, but it would be nice. And I understand kind of the other reason, because yeah, it's in VR. Not everyone has VR. As of right now, I literally have one friend who has a PlayStation VR system, and I doubt he would have got the game, to be honest, if it was co-op. But anyway, it does suck, because I'm sure there are people out there that were really excited to try this with someone else, and obviously VR is possible co-op. There are lots of games out there that have co-op VR games, so that wasn't really stopping them. But it was kind of an experiment, so I understand. So that's my biggest complaint. My other big complaint is the speed, I guess, felt off. And like I said earlier, this is as good as it could be, because there are problems with VR. Mostly the motion sickness thing. If you traveled, if you ran any faster, if you moved any faster, if you jumped, whatever, most people would get motion sick fairly easily and couldn't play it very often. Or couldn't play for very long, at least. So I understand how they kind of slowed it down, and that was the other reason they included the badass super fun whatever, the slow motion time. They added that, I'm guessing, just to make it a little bit easier, because with the lack of speed and mobility that comes with VR, it did get quite difficult at times. So I did find myself almost having to use the badass time. I'm just gonna call it badass time because I don't remember what it's called. But I never really felt like I needed to use it constantly. Like, I never felt like every battle every fight I was in, I had to use it, and that's a good plus on them. I used it most of the time, but usually more because I wanted to, not because I had to. But there were a few fights where it would have been really, really hard if they didn't include it. So that's kind of a pro, kind of a con. Like I said, good on them for adding it because it did fix a problem, but it's a problem that only comes with VR. Another big problem, I know I said, there's pros and cons. There's a lot of cons here now I'm picking up on. Another big problem is play session time. Now, me personally, whenever I play Borderlands 2, it's either because I don't have a lot of time, and it's just one of those games I can pick up, start playing from any point, whatever point my character's on. I can play for 15, 20 minutes, get enjoyment out of it, and then whatever, go do whatever I have to do. Or, on the counter side, I also love to play it whenever I want to marathon something. This, Borderlands 2 is a great, great game to marathon. Just play for days on end. And VR kind of gets in the way of both those aspects. Yeah, it's not a huge pain in the butt setting up VR, but it is a lot more steps to set up VR, make sure the camera's calibrated, make sure both controllers are charged or whatever. That does take more time than just simply turning on the console and turning on Borderlands 2. So that kind of is a pain. Also, with the whole VR and motion sickness and stuff, it is hard to play for more than like 2, maybe 3 hours without like fairly steady breaks. So that kind of ruins that as well. As an overall impact to kind of like Borderlands in general and like the studio and just kind of, I guess, gaming as a whole, if you want to get really dramatic with it, it did all right. From what I've gathered, it sold fairly well. It's still on the front page of the Borderlands store, or the PlayStation store for the VR page. It's still there, so it's still being advertised, so it still must be doing well enough that PlayStation wants to go and say like, hey, this game's available, whatever, that kind of marketing, whatever. I do believe that this was an experiment just to see if games could transition into a VR easy enough, kind of be remastered into a VR format. And I think it did all right. It's like I said, it's fun enough. It's as good as it can be. Is it quite as good as just regular Borderlands 2? No. Between the setup time and like the lack of speed and kind of you can only play it for so long without feeling sick, I play Borderlands 2 whenever I feel like playing Borderlands. I jump into just regular Borderlands 2. I don't ever play the VR version, to be honest. So it's kind of iffy. I feel like more games are going to try stuff like this, even if, kind of like how it's been, how games will have like a VR version at day one or even a little bit later, have like a DLC VR expansion, which is kind of like a little side thing. I doubt they're actually going to do full games like this anymore because, like I said, it's really not as good. It's an interesting experience, but it's not as good as just the actual game. So it's interesting to see going forward if more companies are going to do this, or if Borderlands in general is going to do this. Like if Borderlands 3 is going to come with a VR version, who knows? But I still do believe what I stated in a previous video, how Borderlands 2 in VR was more just the start of the marketing for Borderlands 3, just to get Borderlands back in the minds of people. And I think it was successful. I'm seeing a lot more chatter about Borderlands, whether on Twitter, like even on Reddit, like just random sites where I don't expect to see Borderlands. I'm seeing people who don't usually talk about Borderlands starting to talk about Borderlands more. So I think it was successful. That, or the marketing team's doing some more side stuff, getting more creators talking about it. I don't know what's going on, but I'm seeing it more often. So if that was a direct result of Borderlands 2 in VR, then hey, it worked. Mission accomplished. So do I think it was a complete failure? No. I firmly believe that Borderlands 2 in VR was an experiment, and hopefully they learned whatever they wanted to learn. Whether that be, is it a good way to promote a game? I'd say so, yeah. People are talking about it. This is good. People are talking about Borderlands again. So, that's a good thing. Can you convert a full game into a VR experience? Maybe, depending on the game. Was it worth the time? considering it didn't actually really take much away from the Borderlands 3 team, I'd say yeah, it was worth it. It was worth whatever side team or whatever side company. I forgot who made it. I know I've heard it before, but whatever company actually spent the time to turn into a VR title, I'd say it's worth it. As long as it didn't take away from the main Borderlands 3 team too much, then yeah, I'd say they did a good job. Mission accomplished. Good on them. I'd say they got out of Borderlands 2 in VR exactly what they deserved to get out of it, I guess. It was well done. It was very good. It was fun. But I think that's as much as you can get out of turning a full game into a VR game. They did the best they could. And that's really all I gotta say about this. If you guys have any comments, anything to add to the discussion, anything about anything in general, leave it down in the comments. 'Cause that's how I make these videos, to have conversations with you guys. Also, if you have any video you want me to make in the future, any theory, anything Borderlands related, let me know down in the comments. I'll be sure to make a video on it, or just talk to you, down there about it, whatever. Also, be sure to check out my other channel, YC Games. It's the one with the orange logo. Lots of fun over there. Me and my friends having fun playing video games. It's mostly Rainbow Six Siege, so if you like that game, I'd be sure to check it out. And yeah, that about does it. Keep your stick on the ice. We're all in this together.